So we are ready to start. Welcome to everybody to today's webinar. We will discuss about the topic bridging disciplines for collaborative water solutions among young professionals. This is an online webinar. My name is Mariela Quartucci. I'm sales engineer at NX Filtration and also part of the Young Leaders Program of the International Desalination and Reuse Association. I'm very excited about this webinar and here with a panel of experts that are involved in the water sector with different disciplines, different roles. So I'm very excited to bring the discussion about this topic. Next slide, please. So just a kindly reminder about our coming Congress in December. So 5 days, the International Desalination and Reuse World Congress in Abu Dhabi will take place. So the registration is open and we look forward for your participation. For starting this session, I would like first to invite the panelist, Mr. Rory Weaver, Director of Marketing and Business Development at Philco, and Mr. Ángel Abajas, European Sales Manager in Desalination at Energy Recovery. For this first session, we will discuss the interdisciplinary collaboration among different departments and technical and not technical people. So we will see how working together brings value into the daily work, and of course share a bit of the journey of the two panelists that are invited to today's sessions. So how it is this journey from different sectors into the water treatment.
Yeah, so thanks very much, Mariela. I think I've been quite excited to run this webinar with my young leaders colleagues, because this is a topic that kind of gets talked a lot about as often I think as a bit of a buzzword, you know, interdisciplinary, more in the academic space, and then kind of cross-functional would be the same kind of meaning, often, you know, similarly meaningless when it's not executed so well in industry. But I think it is a really important part of what we do. So, you know, I won't spend too much time introducing myself now, because Ángel and I will actually get onto that a little further on down the slides, just on how we've both come to relatively similar positions within the industry, in technically quite similar roles and commercially quite similar, but from wildly different origins. So I was thinking a bit about the whole interdisciplinary kind of idea, and I think, you know, ultimately working across functions isn't necessarily something that needs its own word, but it is something that we easily get away from. You know, it's easy for engineers to sit in their silo, the salespeople to sit in theirs, and then marketing sits in theirs, and everyone wonders why nobody else knows what they do and why things aren't getting done as well as they might be. And I think, you know, ultimately, if you plug in, say, interdisciplinary, these two pictures are the first Google hits that you get if you Google interdisciplinary. And there's a whole lot of chaos and icons and different kind of interconnections and stuff rolling in together. And that's kind of how it works, but I think really it takes a bit more focus and a bit more planning than just, you know, throwing a bunch of people and departments together. So really, you know, this is something you can talk about on a big kind of high level, you know, department or faculty or corporate level, but it's something that when it works well, you know, we'll see if my colleagues agree, but I think that it works best when you actually have quite a small and focused intervention. So, you know, for me, the nicest example of this has really been, you know, when you bring an engineer, a salesperson, and you know, me as the marketing person together, you have the technical knowledge, you have the customer knowledge. No one knows that better than the salesperson. They interact with the customer, although they may not know every customer. And no one knows the technology better than the engineer, but often the engineer is giving the salesperson, you know, an entirely different set of benefits to what the salesperson knows the customer needs. And I think actually, you know, it's the job of marketing to bridge that gap between the two, and of course, you know, to get it out to the customers and the wider market too. So I mean, when does this work well? You've got to respect, each other's core strengths and also the value of those core strengths. So if you have an engineer who just, doesn't really respect the marketer because they don't have the technical knowledge, then that's no good. And if you have a salesperson who basically thinks that, the technology is fine and the customer just needs to know X, Y, Z and they just want it cheaper anyway, you're also going to have a bit of a problem. But if you can get that whole team together into a position where they have a shared goal, they understand each other's roles, and they understand the value of putting those things together, then you can really make some magic happen. And that's, I think, when organizations become really effective. So, that would be my kind of potted definition of what an interdisciplinary / cross-functional enterprise works. And we have some really nice examples coming down the line from the other panelists about that actually happening in practice. Bringing that back to, us as young professionals, what does that actually mean to us? And given that, this idea that you have a corporate cross-functional idea, but actually that doesn't matter because you, in your role, you're the one that creates the cross-functional collaboration, if you're in a place where that's required. So, nice examples of this, I think, are, if you are, from my own point of view in marketing, if you understand a bit of code, that takes you a long way in interacting with your IT team and with your web design team. If you know a bit of the technology, you can ask better questions of your engineering team, and they will also appreciate that and they'll be able to support you much better. So by knowing a bit about the other roles that aren't necessarily your core function, you really can multiply your own effectiveness, and you can also help get more out of other people. So they can then contribute more too because you're asking the right questions as a marketer, as a salesperson, etc. It also lets you find maybe an opportunity to do something that nobody thought of. Something that everyone thought might be really hard might turn out to be really, really easy. That actually happens, and it's really nice when it does. Something that, the people above you think is a great idea, you might find out after some good conversations is actually extremely difficult and not terribly useful, and you can go and find a different way to handle it. And thirdly, I think, and I really do think this is most importantly, it makes you much better to work with if you can know a little bit about what other people's day is like, what their roles are like, and what your request actually means for them. You can make a big ask if you know it's a big ask and you approach it in that way. That's not necessarily a problem, but it's always going to go down much better if you understand a little bit about what you're actually asking of your colleague, manager, direct report, whoever it might be. So could we go on to the next slide? And in the spirit of interdisciplinary and cross-functional roles, Angel and I actually have quite a nice bit of symmetry here coming from wildly different parts of the world and both outside of the water industry actually. So for myself, I'm not an engineer by training. I studied languages at school and a bit of maths, and I came out in 2012 thinking, okay, yeah, I want to learn Chinese. That's what I want to do. So I went to Oxford, studied Chinese for my undergrad, and immediately got really, really interested in ancient Chinese philosophy and medieval Chinese ghost stories, and spent a really fun few years following that, excellent rabbit hole. Come 2016-17, this had taken me out to studying Western China, and which is very interrelated with Central Asia. So I went to grad school to study the international politics of Central Asia. And that was where I found water, because Central Asian politics is dominated by two very large rivers that run through the 5 republics of Central Asia. And there's a lot of very, very interesting dynamics going on there that I won't spend any time talking about here, unfortunately. But that got me into water and this idea that, this just underpins so much of what happens and so much of how we live our lives. And then it ties into kind of technology and science and politics, and the way that it just underpins everything that we do just really, really grabbed me. So after a very, very enjoyable and interesting bit of research on that, I then went to find a job and discovered this thing called desalination. There was a job at Global Water Intelligence, managing their desalination data sets and doing market research. And I thought, yeah, okay, let's give that a go. I want to work in water. This seems like a good place to grow. So I did that for 4 years, met a lot of people, learned from, the very best in the industry, which was a great privilege for me. and really kind of got my teeth into, you know, how the market works, how the technology works. And I think, you know, for me, thinking about, you know, making jumps between sectors and disciplines, the takeaway for that really was kind of, you know, if you're interested in something, just following that as far as you go. And if that interest is, you know, genuine and comes from a place of passion, it's generally well received. And, you know, stupid questions will also be well received if they're from a place of real curiosity. So, you know, 4 years of that later, I had 3 or 4 IDEA yearbooks. If any of those landed on your desk from 2017 to 2021, that was me. And then when we came through to 2021, I made the move over to industry, into marketing and business development with Fedco, who produce pumps and energy recovery devices for the desalination industry. And that was a really nice place again to kind of pivot and change the focus of what I was doing, but remain within this this industry and this set of technology and commercial dynamics. And that, you know, bringing those two things together to be able to interface with both engineers and salespeople and our customers, has been a really enjoyable and rewarding experience. And I think, you know, that kind of storytelling is more and more valued in our industry, you know, as the decision makers migrate maybe more from the engineering departments up to the boardrooms, as water gets higher and higher up the agenda. So, you know, as water gets higher up the agenda of companies, the decisions are also moving a bit higher up the food chain of those companies, which, for better or worse, means slightly fewer engineers who can really get their teeth around the process and the technology making those decisions. So yeah, it's been a really interesting ride from studying, you know, China to Central Asia to market research to marketing. But each of those really has led on to the other quite naturally, and they've also really helped be a base to move on onto the next one. So I think, you know, if there's a moral from this story, it's that, you know, if you are looking for a career in, say, desalination or water, but you don't have a ton of water-related experience, you know, don't necessarily worry. With good, you know, if you're enthusiastic about it and you do some research, there is a way in and it can be learned. So I would say just go for it. So with that, I'll pass over to Angel and ask to move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Rory.
Thanks, Rory. Very nice words. I totally agree with many things you said, and we will discuss later. But basically, I agree in what you think about the importance of the marketers, because I am a firm defensor of communication as a very, very important skill in the professionals. So, I mean, you may not have like very, very high strengths in engineering, but being a good communicator as you are, and you know, having some interest and motivation in the technical side, it's a perfect combination and creates a very good professional as you are. So, you know, as you said, we wanted to show like a very different backgrounds, but ending one in front of the other, let's say. Two companies dedicated in doing pumps and energy recovery devices, very similar roles. So in my case, I studied engineering. I did a bachelor engineering in industrial, specialized in electronics. And then I finished my university, my bachelor at a very, very bad timing in Spanish economy. We had an important crisis back then. So I started my studies like thinking I was going to be like an elite person, and then appeared in a very, very critical situation, no job for anyone. So it was very hard for our generation to step forward. Many of my colleagues from university went to Germany, or you know, they emigrate, and I was one of the few who stayed. And then I took the first thing I had. So I ended up being a field service engineer. You know, I was told first year of university I will never have to work with my hands, like cutting cables, doing the cabling of a motor, doing instrumentation, bending tubes, lifting heavy loads, doing many things that I never studied. And I ended up doing this. I started in very, very difficult countries where, you know, the senior field service engineers, they didn't want to go. Like I started Nigeria, Ghana. I have this picture is very nice from Angola, that I spent the whole Christmas over there. 2 months deployed there, starting up a gas turbine in Angola. And then, come back. And then, I was trying to build like my personal life around my job, and both things were not very, very well compenetrated. So I was looking for something, not spending like 3-4 months abroad in a camp in Algeria. So then a friend of mine that currently is commercial director of Fluidtech in Spain, he called me and he told me, I know you since a long time, you know how to sell, so I don't care if you are engineer, we need people in our sales department. I know you can travel wherever you want, you are like a SWAT, and I know you can communicate what I'm going to tell you to communicate. So go into the same. And then I started my journey in water. I didn't know anything about the water industry, and I had a very nice years in Fluidtech, 4 years managing Middle East and North Africa. I found very interesting the water industry, very multidisciplinary. I also used my skills in previous job, like lifting heavy loads, instrumentation, motors. So I spent a lot of time in the Arab world. So I knew how to treat culturally our Arab customers. So it was like a win-win. And of course, I had all these visa things, travel things with me. I never failed when I'm traveling. So that's what was a perfect combination for me. Instead of 2 months in Algeria, being 5 days in Dubai, visiting customers, it was like heaven for me. And then, I was super lucky again and joined ERI as a sales manager for Europe and Israel. And now working on remote, which is another thing you can find in our industry. You can find a very nice job working remotely, giving you a lot of flexibility with open corporations. So you are open to the world, not like closer to the local industry, like many people ending up doing engineering careers. So, I mean, that's what I wanted to explain you about my journey, and also compare to Rory, no?
Yeah, thanks, Angel. I think it's very interesting because I did a similar journey, like from very technical field service engineer also to sales in the end. But it's interesting to see how from the technical you can go to sales, or also more related to communications. How can you get into a very industrial sector as also Rory did? So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing those experiences.
Very nice. So I want to say that for me was like a relief, because I'm not a pure engineer guy. I am more in the sales, in the talking, and I'm resilient to failures and to not succeed. So I'm good in sales, not so pragmatic to be a good engineer. So I found also my, my place in life. So it's good, yeah. It's good that you mentioned you are also coming from the same side. And also, this is the other slide I prepared for this webinar. Just wanted to show people how our industry it's multidisciplinary. No? So we have thousands of type of waters, we have thousands of applications, type of customers, countries, type of projects, structures. I mean, the combinations are huge. My company is doing a very small portion of it. And for us, it's like our bread and butter. But you realize water industry, no one knows our company. If you go out of seawater desalination, RO applications, and water is completely huge. So then I wanted to show this very nice case in Poland, in Warsaw, that they installed a battery of clamps in the water intake to the city. So these clamps are hooked to a computer. And there is a system, a mechanical system, that wherever they 7 out of 8 of them closed, there is an alarm telling the operators that there may be risk of contamination. So this was a very long-term study done by Piotr Domek from University of Poznań. And now this has been deployed in another 50 Polish waterwork installations, and this is the perfect example of how multidisciplinary our job can be, because we may need the use of animals, and we need to feed them, and we need to maintain them alive, and we need to understand how they behave. So you need the biologists, or these kind of professionals. And we have these people like marine science people doing environmental studies and other things that are very needed in our projects. And also you will need mechanical engineers to do the sensors, and you will need instrumentation engineers, control process engineers, and you will need a full range of engineers, also like programming, and so all together they make this total industrial application that it's a very nice example that what we see every day in our life. I mean, when I am working in seawater ROs, you see that it's a full range of professionals working there. So it's very nice industry to talk to many people. Yeah.
Thanks, Angel. Yeah, I think we are lucky to be part of collaborating to this sustainable market and be part of this important transition in the water sector. And we, I think, end up working here actually not planning it, and that's what makes it special when you can find your passion. Like you start to work there, you discover that you really are passionate about that, and then you continue your career. And of course, there is also people that started early career already focusing membranes and water treatment from the beginning. So now I would like to invite to the next speaker, Mr. Jan Hendrik Himols. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but so. Desalination expert at the Fisher GmbH. So welcome. So for people that also is interested to be or to contribute to this more sustainable future, and it has different disciplines, different backgrounds, different studies, how can they collaborate, or what kind of roles can we find in the water sector, in desalination, for example?
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. So basically, yeah, I will give you a short introduction into diverse career path in the water sector. Not being from my own perspective, but maybe I will give you a short overview of a large-scale desalination project. So when we want to install desalination plants, especially in the Middle East, we usually have a project company or a desalination plant owner company who first of all, of course, thinks about the off-taker and who they want to provide with the water. And so they go to local water authorities, and or can be government and owned companies or private owned companies, and get a water purchase agreement where they basically set up the tariffs for the water, basically the price per cubic meter, and also for the capacity that the local off-taker requires. And then they start getting the licenses and approvals and permits from the local government. When it comes to financing of a desalination project, you usually have co-investors, which can be desalination developers, but also you go to lenders, basically commercial banks, where you get a loan agreement for this project. And these commercial banks, they can guarantees from, for example, the World Bank, especially when these projects are in developing countries. So you can already see that before we actually get into the engineering part of a desalination project, we first do a lot of commercial and legal aspects. And this is what I want to highlight here, is that, especially as Rory already mentioned, that if you have a very different background, you don't need to become like a water expert from university. You can, first of all, you can learn, and there are many fields in the desal industry where you actually, your technical background is not so much needed. Like, for example, when you are in a legal and you want to every like co-investors, lenders, project owners, EPC, which I will explain later. They all need also a legal department because you are dealing with a lot of contract questions, and then you also need a lot of business people who can sell these projects, who can sell products, who can make a financial forecast and all this. It's a very different aspect that we usually discuss in our desalination talks, or what you can maybe think of you're working in desalination when you are at university. But this is a major point. So once the financing is established and agreed on, the project company goes goes to the market and starts a tendering process, where then different EPC companies, which are engineering, procurement, and construction companies, can bid on these projects, and then the company with the best value for money usually gets selected and gets the project. And then these EPCs, they basically start in design the plant, of course, always in aligned with the capacity that the desalination plant should provide, and also with the local restrictions they may have because of permits or licenses, which are coming from the government. And then the EPC as to start to procure all the technologies for a desalination plant, which can be pumps, in Rory's case, for example, can be energy recovery devices, can be pipelines, can be membranes, of course, can be remineralization, can be filters, and so on. There's this procurement process is quite big, and so they start doing this. And then they start constructing the plant. But even then, this after the plant is finalized, we have a commissioning. So basically, where they have to show, the EPC has to show how the plant is running, and if it agrees the capacity that is in the beginning agreed on, and everything like this. And then we need to find a operation and maintenance company, which then will operate the plant for a certain years. And they basically have to organize their procurement for spare parts. They have to organize procurement for chemicals and all this. And what I wanted to show you here is that, first of all, we don't just need the engineers, especially like process engineer or chemical engineers. We also require only in the design and the construction phase of a desalination plant, we need civil engineers, we need environmental engineers, we need especially electrical engineering, instrumentation and control. And so this gives you just a background that not only maybe process engineering, or that you have to study membranes to become an engineer in the desalination world. There are many different ways careers and jobs required to construct a desalination plant. And in the whole process, of course, you need then also lawyers, you need business people who are involved in such a project.
Indeed, also in the licenses, approvals, there is a lot of people, researchers also involved in the environmental aspects. So, and of course, as well, behind the technology suppliers, as you said, pumps, membranes, when the EPC has to integrate all this, they also need software. They also need the software engineers, programmers. So there is even more disciplines that are broader than the technical aspect of the water.
Yes, and actually Rory had a good point when he said that maybe it's very important that when you are passionate about this industry or water in general, I think there's probably a job for everyone. Like it's so diverse. You can do so many things that are can be government entity, can be private sector. There are so many different roles involved in desalination, and it's just, of course, it's in the beginning, it's maybe a bit difficult and tricky to get to know the players or the companies that are involved in this. But once this is done, there are many opportunities out there.
Yes, there is always a first step that you can do when you are interested to be part of it, and then the doors are open, and from then there is a huge world of experience and possibilities to grow it.
Yeah.
Thanks. So now talking a bit about the different actors in the water sector, how the different disciplines are contributing. I mentioned software, programming. So with this, I would like to welcome Dr. Guilherme Gilabert Oriol, Global Desalination and Municipal R&D Leader at DuPont Water Solutions. We will discuss an example, right? We are talking about the different disciplines, how we can collaborate, what is the value of collaborating together, how all these interactions make to being valuable solutions. So now, Guilherme, please, would like you to introduce this example of how the collaboration between different departments and skills can deliver valuable solutions for water and desalination.
Sure, and thank you, Mariela, for this kind of introduction. So maybe if you can move to the next slide, please. So today, I just want to bring an example that my team have been working on. And this example is about a piece of software that we have developed. It's called Reverse Osmosis Operations Advisor. And for me, this example clearly identifies the value of working together. Next slide, please. So I will not introduce my career. Probably it's very boring. I've been 14 years working in research and development and in water, but this highlights two of my key passions. First, water, and we share with, you've heard, we share with all the panelists the passion for water. And the second, and that's why I've always stayed in R&D, is innovation. I'm passionate of innovation. And this is a clear example of how water and innovation bridge together. Let me just spend a few minutes to explain what this Reverse Osmosis Digital Operation Advisor is. Basically, it's a tool. You will soon be able to find it in our DuPont watersolutions.com app. And you can see here on the left, you just click it. And basically, it has two pieces. You input your plant data that you have previously normalized with any normalization software. And then on the right, you can see multiple plots. This corresponds to the normalized permit flow, normalized soil rejection, and normalized pressure drop. And what it tells you is not just the normalized data, which is useful, but it tells you when you are doing cleanings and which type of fouling you are getting. Is it organic fouling? Is it biological fouling? It is scaling. It is particulate fouling. Your membranes are getting bleached because you're exposing them to chlorination, for example. Are you getting a mechanical failure? But this tool does not stop here. This tool also proposes you a scheme to do an optimization based on machine learning. And it also lets you save money, right? Save money in terms of energy, in terms of chemicals save, downtime, that's also very important, and water recovery. So what I want to talk to you in the next slide, and this is probably my favorite part of the presentation, is how we develop this idea. Because now that you see here, you say, oh, okay, yeah, makes sense, which I agree, right? But how we got this idea. So this is very interesting. And we're just talking about the next IDRA conference in Abu Dhabi, which I recommend you to attend if possible in December. So I recall being in this IDRA conference in Dubai back in 2019, and we just went to visit a customer. And this customer, we were in a meeting room, and they were telling me, oh, Guilherme, we have problems with fouling. We don't know exactly why we're getting fouling. can you help understanding which type of fouling we had? Because it's a big problem for us. So I just sit down with them, looking onto the computer, and I said, yes, I've spent 10 years, my team, researching fouling. So for me, it's pretty clear. But I realized that you really need to be very well educated, right? And this is why this idea was generated from a customer need that we identify. And, you know, sometimes we can have a lot of ideas. When I take a shower, always new ideas come to my mind. Some are more crazy, others not that much. But what is important is that from generating an idea to a product, you really need to work together, right? And that's why I like to call it that innovation is about connecting the dots, right? You don't need to be super smart, not even super well educated, but you really need to know with whom to partner, right? And in this particular case, we went to R&D, right? I work in R&D, my team was in R&D too. And I recall having a conversation with a colleague of mine. I told him, hey, Gerard, we have more than 10 years of experiments. We've been doing almost hundreds of experiments studying fouling. Can we just feed this into kind of a machine learning, artificial intelligence algorithm, and this decision that we do in our mind to identify fouling, get it automatically done? And his answer is yes, I have all this data, but I have no idea how to program it. Neither do I have, right? So this is why we went to information technologies. We contact Very Bright Data Analysis, and they said, oh yeah, this is very easy. Just send me the data and explain me what you want to achieve. For me, it was not easy at all, right? So, but that's why we have multiple functions, as you were pointing, Angel, in your example, right? And being able to communicate well in the right language of each specific function, it's sometimes challenging, but you learn a lot of this. And eventually, we could develop a prototype, which you just saw it here, and something also very important that sometimes we fail to understand, right? You were saying, Angel, how you're good on commercial, and that's why we need also commercial, because I don't want to have an idea. I want to have a solution that solves a customer need, right? And this is why we need people that know how to sell. This is not my case, so that we can close the loop, right? But it also does not finalize here, because you will be launching a product and you learn, right? Because you get customer feedback. And this is where you start to get the circle again, right? That's why I put these multiple arrows, because it's like the new Windows 11, right? That is now being released. You say, oh, but maybe we could also take into account this algae fouling. Oh, we didn't thought about this. Let's try to develop, right? And you can go again and again in the circle. So yeah, that was my short introduction. In the next slide, I just put a link if you want to try it. Yes, you can just contact me either through LinkedIn, through my email address, or any one of the panelists here will be happy to assist you. Thank you.
Thanks, Guilherme. So yeah, we see like different actors, departments involved to deliver the solution, but as well also to use, right? The end users might be not engineers, sometimes might be just operators. That really also to what we were saying, also we don't speak the same language, also we have to communicate this for the end user that is easy. So that there is a lot of skills involved to deliver just one solution, and I think each contribution is as important for that purpose. Now we can move to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can write it in the box for Q&A, and we will be happy to answer. Please don't be shy. So let's see. I see, Guilherme, you are typing, not sure. Rory, there is a question for you. Also to Guilherme. Let's start with Guilherme. Can you give an example of a time that an innovation project didn't go well and what you learned from the experience?
Sure. So I recall just when I was starting my career, a very particular research project that was about some ultrafiltration fibers that promise like 2 or 3 times less energy. The problem that that happened in this project is that we realized that producing them would cost probably like 5 or 6 times higher cost, right? And eventually it was kind of not paying off. The return of investment was not there. So that's why it's very important, in my view, that always before starting to pull a lot of research teams, a lot of people, right, spending a lot of resources in a project, taking a lot of time, really to sit down, do your economical assessment, your NPV, net present value, or business model, to see if what you are investing and the final cost, right, will really pay off, right? If you will get a favorable payback on your investment.
Thanks. Next question to Rory that I have here. What advice would you give to professionals from non-technical backgrounds looking to enter in the water sector?
Yeah, I think you kind of have a double challenge if you're non-technical trying to get in, because if you know, let's say you come from maybe even water engineering, it's already hard enough to know which companies to look at because we're so spread out across the whole the whole world, all sorts of different parts of the water industry. And then if you're non-technical, that's, sort of another barrier to entry. It's quite an engineer-dominated sector. I think the first thing, is to be confident with it and just remember that there are lots of roles, sales, often you can be trained up and you can, transfer whatever sales experience you might have into a new role. Marketing is a great example, many engineers don't communicate that well. It's not I don't think anyone would be surprised by that statement. Many other core skills, but that isn't always one of them. And so that kind of ability to just, communicate effectively and translate from one group of people to another is really, really valuable. A piece of really just practical advice I would actually give is go to a trade show. Find one of the big ones, from the US, WEFTEC, if you're in Europe, Aquatech. Often the entrance fee isn't that high, and often if you're a student, it's quite low indeed, and maybe even free. And if you're a job seeker hitting some booths, if you are someone looking for a job, I'll let you in a secret. A lot of people are actually quite bored when they're at trade shows, and if you show up asking them about their job and their company, they'll be pretty happy to chat with you and give you some advice. So yeah, I would say any of those routes, join the YLP and the IDRA is a big thing you can do for that as well. So really just kind of, if you're doing your research and you're really interested in the sector and you're reaching out to people at trade shows or on LinkedIn, that is almost always going to be well received. If you're coming from a real place of interest, everyone in the water industry loves working in water. That's why they stay forever. And if someone shows up asking about what you do, we're generally pretty happy to help in those cases.
Indeed. Thank you. There is another question. I think it's interesting. It's open, so whoever wants to answer, feel free to do. So I would like to ask about what do you find more challenging about working with so different types of people? I think it's a very interesting question that I think we all face every day working in companies with different departments. So maybe you, Jan, would like to answer, maybe from your perspective, working in the projects.
Yeah, sure. So I think as Rory already mentioned, I think communicating is very important, and sometimes also finding the right language, how to talk to a certain people. So when in my work, when I talk to engineers, I certainly have to use different words when I talk to salespeople or marketing people. And I think this is something you will learn, like, or to scientists even. And this is something I think which comes over time after practicing. You see like what is better working and so on. And another thing I think which is in the water sector a very nice field or thing is the many cultures you are interacting with. If it's like people from Asia, Europe, the America, it's very Africa, it's very diverse. And so communicating with people with different backgrounds and different cultures definitely challenging, but nothing someone should be afraid, and it actually gives you a very open mind. And yeah, the most important thing is just to clearly communicate what should be done and in a very polite way. And I think then it doesn't matter if challenging task needs to be explained to business people, or the sales forecast needs to be communicated to engineers. And I think in the end, everyone wants to pull off a great project, and therefore I think communication is the key.
Thank you.
And I would maybe actually add to that it's not just the person you're communicating with, it's also your boss and their boss. Because if you're trying to, say, get an engineer to help you out with some marketing, that's not necessarily their core job. And they've got a whole bunch of other things they need to be doing. So you need to develop, on a bigger, and this, is a challenge that many organizations face, is, developing that culture where you do help each other out, and you kind of all recognize that, yes, this is taking away time from, this core task I need to do, but it is important. So I am going to, give it the time and attention that it needs.
Next one, there are many questions. I'm trying to, does corporate R&D consider environmental aspects when considering innovative projects, or is it only financial?
I can probably comment on this one.
Yes,
in our
please.
particular case, for us, sustainability is a key driver. And in fact, we like to talk on sustainability enabled sales. Because eventually, if you think about that, any innovation that we are aiming to launch, at least on the water industry, would benefit directly the environment, right? If we launch a membrane, for example, that can save 5% of energy, it means a reduction, right, of 5% greenhouse emissions, 5% carbon. If we launch a membrane that has anti-fouling resistance, this means that you will clean less often. So you'll use less water and less chemicals, right? And I could go on this field.
Yes, and maybe I can add, I think in the design of a desalination plant, you have to analyze the environmental impact as well. So R&D, of course, should always be aimed for, let's say, an environmental friendly solution in any regards. And if membrane producers would not do this, I think at a certain point they probably would not sell anymore a lot of things.
I would say it's a combination of both. At least, now the environmental thing is very, very aligned with the offering of many of our companies, and it's very welcome from our customers. But of course, there is also the financial part, the feasibility of it, and how it will be done. That this is something we need to consider when also, because we need to support these initiatives in the long term, so we don't want to spend resources and things for the for the environmental first. We need to also cover on the both sides, but from my side it's a combination of both.
Thank you. There is one specific question on the tool, Guilherme. Is RO Operation Advisor directly connected to the automation PLC or the CS, or the data are collected and put in the solution? Because I am actually working on the system that collects the data directly from the PLC.
So yeah, thanks for the question. So right now it's not interconnected. That means that you just need to put them into an Excel and then just upload it. Very easy. Nevertheless, that's in our kind of plan. So if you have any suggestion, just please feel free to reach out to us. And this is, by the way, a perfect example of this interdisciplinary collaboration.
Thank you. I want to make sure that I'm not missing any question. Could you please explain more about ML training models? The focus is on economical analysis or on the design part?
No, very good question also. So you might have seen in my first slide of the two that I presented, basically first we train the model, right, to analyze the same patterns as we as humans are trained to say, oh yeah, that's clearly biofouling, right? Or this is a combination of biofouling and organic fouling. But then once we've generated these insights, we want to use these insights to get some useful information to the customer, because the customer will tell you, okay, you tell me that I have biofouling, that's fine, but what can I do about it, right? How I can use this information to save some money. And that's why we added this economical model that you saw that really tells you how much dollars you will be saving, and also energy, which relates to the greenhouse emissions, water, which is also an environmental factor, and chemicals, which is also helping the environment.
Thanks, Hilar. So I think we are close to the closing time. I don't know if there is any other questions before we end this webinar, but also for what we were talking, right, how to people that is really interested in being part and make a positive impact in sustainability and water. We have a mentorship program, part of the International Desalination and Reuse Association Young Leaders Program, that we are part of. So for those that are interested in this, also please reach us. You can also go to in the website. There is also more information, and the main goal is also to bring these connections between the young professionals and the industry, and with the mentors that are also professionals having a career in the water and desalination and reuse. Just 1 second to see if there is more. Okay, there is okay, there is one more questions. Maybe we can answer this one quickly before the end of the webinar. Reverse osmosis has dominated the desalination market due to its high efficiency, cost effectiveness, and energy improvements in recent years. Which other water desalination technology were to be considered as researcher?
Well, I guess I can put my global water intelligence hat back on briefly and answer this one. I mean, yeah, obviously there are lots of different technologies bouncing around at different stages of readiness. To be honest, reverse osmosis is a really, really effective way of desalinating water, especially at the very large scale. And there's been some interesting research, sort of on the theoretical level, kind of indicating that it is in fact the most efficient way, you know, if you compare it to electrochemical, if you compare it to thermal. And, you know, if that is the case, I think what probably all of my colleagues here would agree is that, you know, the RO equipment is extremely efficient. You know, Guillaume and I and Angel's companies, you know, we spend a ton of time trying to pull 1% extra efficiency out of our products. You know, it's a lot of effort for a very, very small improvement, because these are so finely tuned. Where the big gains stand to be made is in making the whole kind of system work well together. So, you know, if you've got the equipment but you're not running it in the way it needs to be run, or if you've set it up in a way that's less than optimal, then you're not going to get the full kind kind of performance out of all the different pieces of equipment. And there's quite big gains to be made on the system level that I think still haven't fully been explored. So I would say that, more than technology is, you're getting into joining the dots. There's a lot of research and field testing that needs to be done there that, in many cases hasn't been done and is quite difficult. So, on the academic and the R&D side, I think work on almost kind of operational optimization and design optimization, I think, is the big step forward that is yet to be made for the desal industry.
Thank you.
Maybe I can add also something to this. I think we have to distinguish here a bit between the term of desalination. So when we are talking in this case about big large-scale plants, then of course I think reverse osmosis, there's probably no way around this. But we have desalination also in many other industries, and also especially in the industry sector. And for example, there we have desalination can also be kind of a zero liquid discharge application where you try to minimize the effluent stream that is sent back to a river, for example. And there, at the moment, there are still a lot of thermal technologies used, because there you have often you can use waste heat, you can use maybe even or electricity that is provided by these corporate or companies, by this industry. So I think all these technologies, they still find applications everywhere. But probably in the large scale desalination, I think at the moment it seems there's no way around reverse osmosis. And as Rory said, I think researchers should optimize, like trying to invent or do research on membranes that use less chemicals, that are, I mean, Guilherme can probably talk about this as well, like using less antiscalants and being more chlorine resistant. And these are things I think where you can really further lower the cost of desalination.
Yeah, also like research about the innovation in the existing membranes, but also let's not forget about reuse. And in reuse, we have broader membranes that does not only applies to reverse osmosis, but also other technologies as well, membrane-based. So I think there is a world of different membranes, and depending what we want to do, we can always go deeper and do research for innovation and for new products. So given there are not more questions for what I can see, would like already to close that we are on time. So would like to thank you to the attendees and of course to the panelists for joining to this session. I hope that has been inspiring for people and that helps to find also the way into this, I guess, passion that we all have for water and reuse. So if you have any questions, you can always contact via the International Desalination and Reuse website. And we see you in another webinar. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.